back, Chappelle. Welcome back to it. Welcome back to your Flip Classroom that now conveniently seems to be taking place all the time in my living room. But welcome back to your Flip Classroom and our continuing discussion about the ignition of the powder keg that would start off World War I. Man, that was a terrible intro. Let me try that again. Let's see those work on the back end. Welcome back, Chappelle. Welcome back to it. Welcome back to your Flip Classroom and our continuing discussion of the outbreak of World War I. Look at that. It's much better. I like the flow a little bit better and all that fun stuff, right? The big thing about it, though, is a couple of quick announcements. Remember, you're going to have a quiz on all this content and stuff like that. Now, really, really quick, some of y'all were like, Mr. Jerry, you said it would actually start with a blah, blah, blah. I'm going to say in this flip exactly where it's going to stop, right? And exactly where the quizzable content will stop. I'm even going to put a title up, an alarm of sorts and stuff like that, and be like, brah, brah, like that's where it's going to stop. And then everything else after that will just be covered in a warm-up and stuff like that. But going into it, though, we're going to pick right up where we left off in class. Hey, you two quit fighting. We can't have World War I inside this house, right? So the big thing about it, though, is we left off in class talking about the it's okay, buddy. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, right? That guy who's going to be the second in line to rule over Austria, basically, in essence, the way you think of, is a prince, right? Hi, Josie. Now, going into it, though, we have to understand, we talked about this a lot in class, like who he is, what he was doing, and stuff like that. But Archduke Franz Ferdinand is the next up guy to rule Austria, right? He will become the Austrian emperor upon the death of his uncle, Franz Joseph, right? Now, the next thing we need to understand, though, is where was he? He was in Bosnia. Why was he in Bosnia? Because Bosnia was a part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire at the time. So Franz Joseph, the emperor of Austria, was also the emperor of Bosnia, right? And so the thing about it is Archduke Franz Ferdinand was like, you know what? I'm going to go visit those Bosnians, and I'm going to shake some hands and kiss some babies and make everybody realize that the Austrians are chill and cool, right? We're going to kiss those babies. That's all isn't that right, big boy? Yeah. Oh, thank you. Now, going into it, though, what we have to also understand is that we talked about this in E period, and Kai Jones was so astute about how understanding how groups like Young Bosnia and the Black Hand use political assassinations to get the word out about their cause, right? We need to understand that groups at the time, like Young Bosnia and the Black Hand, used to use large-scale political assassinations to progress their word of their cause, right? The Young Bosnians and the Black Hand, for example, were Serbian and Bosnian nationalist groups, right? The Young Bosnians were going to be the guys that actually perpetrated the assassination, and the Black Hand was the big group that actually gave them all the money to do so, right? Now, the thing about it, though, going into it, is they actually go into it and they try to perpetrate this assassination, right? And they want to do this whenever he shows up in Bosnia, in Sarajevo to be specific, on June 28th, 1914, right? And the plan was originally to actually drop a grenade into the car during the parade itself, right? During the parade, the plan was that one of the guys was going to jump out of the crowd and go booga 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 and like actually slow the motorcade down, and one of the other dudes was actually, like the other four were supposed to keep the crowd back, and one guy was supposed to come out and Michael Jordan dunk a grenade into the car, blow up the Archduke, kill him and his wife, go forward, move on, no harm, no foul. But the day of the actual assassination came on June 28th, and what ended up happening, Josie, was a wild, wild occurrence. The guy that actually was supposed to put the grenade in the car messed up and actually shot the grenade over the car and ended up hitting the crowd in the back and stuff like that, right? Which is really, really sad. Now, going into it, though, he didn't actually stop the parade. The Archduke continued the parade after going off and visiting the people injured by the bomb blast and stuff like that, and that's him right there, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and his wife, Sophie, right? They continued the parade instead of stopping it and instead of going home to Austria, and what ended up happening is a tragic turn of events. Because their car took a wrong turn down a road they shouldn't have gone down, right? The car that was in the parade was supposed to turn down this one street, but the reason why they couldn't turn down this one street, Josie, is because there was a car accident that was blocking the progression of the motorcade, right? It was blocking the parade, so they had to go up one street, and when they went up one street, one of the guys that was in the original group of assassins that was supposed to put the grenade in the car, well, he wasn't the one that was supposed to put the grenade in the car, but one of the guys that was a part of this whole grenade in the car, like assassination attempt, had actually gotten away and didn't get arrested when the rest of the guys did. And his name was Gavrilo Princip. He was a young 19-year-old member of Young Bosnia that wanted to try and kill the Archduke, but when the motorcade passed in front of the cafe that he was sitting at, he jumped up out of his chair, ran up to the side of the motorcade and shot not only the Archduke, but also his wife Sophie as well, and assassinated them both, right? And he's going to immediately be arrested after this moment. And the thing that ends up going down, though, is a massive turn. Oh my God, dude. Okay, God, your face is in my face now. Are you happy now? Are you happy that your face is in my face? The thing that's going to end up happening, though, is a massive, terrible set of events, right? And basically, there are a bunch of dominoes that were set up, and the worst things that people could have done is what they ended up doing. So you would think that immediately after this, right, on June 29th, Austria is going to freak out and declare war on the Black Hand and young Bosnia and try to root them out for killing their person that was next in line for the throne of Austria, right? Well, what ended up happening is actually everyone went on vacation. The very weird thing that actually ended up happening is, after the Archduke was assassinated, people didn't react the way that you would think so. Like, they didn't actually react in a huge cacophony of exuberance and angst and anger, being like, we gotta get those guys. They actually didn't freak out that much. The world leaders like Kaiser Wilhelm II, right, the guy from Germany who had that dead arm that actually hung right here at his side. Notice it's just propped up on a sword really quick for you. So the thing about it, though, is in general, Kaiser Wilhelm II was like, I can't even go to the funeral because I have to go on vacation. And he actually ended up going on a cruise to Norway. And he left a bunch of other people in charge. And this right here was actually a picture taken of the royal funeral of Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie, right? But the thing about it was very, very under-attended. Not a lot of people actually went to it because they actually, all the rulers like Kaiser Wilhelm and King George V of England and also Nicholas II of Russia, they all like went on vacation and didn't actually really even care that much. An assassination of another guy had actually gotten more press than actually like the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand did, right? But the thing about it, though, is it wasn't necessarily the assassination, as you can see, right, that led to the immediate beginning of the World War I. What ended up happening is the terrible decisions that actually followed, right? And the first one is this thing called the blank check. Now, like I just said, because Kaiser Wilhelm is going to end up going on vacation, he told his representatives in Austria, right? Kaiser Wilhelm, of course, is the king of Germany. He tells Franz Joseph, the emperor of Austria, and also the ambassadors to Austria, you tell Austria that we will back them no matter what they decide to do, right? You tell Austria Germany fully supports them no matter what they decide to do, and if they decide that they want to go to war, we'll support them in this war. If they decide they want to do that, then we'll do that, right? And there's Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany right there, and there's Franz Joseph, right? Well, the thing about it, though, is the blank check is the metaphor that we're getting at right now, okay? Because you can ask your parents about this. A blank check is a scary thing, because a blank check can be filled out for any amount whatsoever that you want to fill it out with, right? And so when Germany said to Austria, we will support you no matter what you decide to do, this is going to be the first step in leading up to World War I. Because now you've got Germany and a military powerhouse in Europe supporting Austria going into this, right? Well, then what's going to happen is in July 1914, the month that actually followed the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, it was a period of time known as the July Crisis, right? When Austria issued a series of 10 demands to Serbia, knowing full well that they couldn't actually get them done before the end of July, right? Saying like, hey, you will disarm yourselves, you will root out the Black Hand, you will like redo your elections, you will do this, you will do that. A series of demands that Austria knew for a fact Serbia couldn't do, and Austria said, if you do not do all 10 of these things, Pierre, as you block everyone's image of me, if you do not do these 10 things, Pierre, then they would invade Serbia and start a war, right? And the thing about it is that the Austrians were like, hey, Serbia, you better do it, and Serbia's like, we don't know what to do, man, we can't. And so Pierre, who is Serbia's Slavic big brother, though? None other than the Russians, right? And so the Russians, after they hear about this, Pierre, right, after they hear about all this shenanigans, they're going to actually get very upset, and they're going to begin to mobilize their military, right, and prepare themselves for war, all right? So the Russians are now getting ready for war because of that whole Pan-Slavism thing, right? Because of all that Pan-Slavic tension and that nationalistic Slavic tension that's going into it, we've now got an issue of Germany saying they'll support Austria no matter what they do, Austria going up to Serbia, and now going up to Serbia is now making Russia mad, right? Do you see how these alliances are about to crumble in on themselves because of the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, being the thing that tipped everything over in the tipping point of going into World War I, right? So now what's going to end up happening, though, is the alliance system falls in on itself, right? Because the unfortunate mistake is that whilst Kaiser Wilhelm was on his vacation and just arriving back in Germany, Austria declared war on Serbia, right? Now, Serbia being a Slavic country, Russia is going to declare a war on Austria because they're like, we told you to leave them alone, right? And they refuse to do so. So the Austrians are going to declare war on the Serbians, right? Germany is then going to declare war on Russia and on France within the matter of 3 days. So yeah. And then few people decided not to choose a side at all, right? Including the Belgians and the United States, right? Now, the Belgians are going to be very, very important in this entire thing, right? Because they declared their neutrality. They're a brand new country. They had just recently become a thing. And it's going to become a really, really big deal because the Brits tell the Germans that you do not touch Belgium. And if you touch Belgium, Germany, then we're going to come in full force. The British are. And the U.S. is just like, hey, we're America. We're over there right now. We're just not bothering, right? And so we declared ourselves neutral in this conflict up front. Now, what's going to happen, though, is these alliance systems are going to crumble in on themselves, and World War I will start. But I'm going to clip in an old flip real quick, and we're going to talk a little bit about exactly how World War I was fought. But I'll see y'all then. Y'all have a good one. Oh, by the way, this right here is where the quizzable content stops. But I'll see y'all then. World War I is going to be a completely new kind of war, right? We know all that stuff happened. The blank check came through, the July crisis, and all that led to the first shots of the war being fired. But what is this war going to look like? How's it going to be different and intrinsically important from all these other wars, right? Well, the first thing we got to talk about now that we're actually in this situation is the German strategy, right? When we were looking at that last slide, when Austria declared war on Russia, when Russia declared war on when Austria declared war on Serbia, and then Russia declared war on Austria, and then Germany declared war on Russia, this domino effect, right? Well, there was one little weird thing about that domino effect. Germany, out of nowhere, declared war on France, right? They declared war on Russia and then immediately went and attacked France before they decided to attack Russia. Why is this? This brings a big question of what is the German strategy for this entire war? Well, the thing about it, y'all, that you need to understand is that the Germans are trying to avoid what is known as a two-front war. They don't want to be fighting on both sides of their country. Russia is to their east and France is to their west, right? So they want to try and figure out, can we knock out one of these groups as quickly as possible, right? Can we knock them out as fast and as quickly as possible so then we can actually focus all of our attention on the other side? Because fighting a two-front war is a massive disadvantage. You have to take your military, you got to split it in half, you got to send resources to either side of your country. That's a terrifying thing. And if the two-front war continues on, you're not going to be able to get goods traded through those lines, and your people might end up running out of food, right? So the thing they came up with was actually called the Schlieffen Plan, right? Now, everybody right now needs to go ahead and highlight Schlieffen Plan. Underline it, star it, highlight it, circle it a bunch of times. It's super, super important. The Schlieffen Plan was actually created by Otto von Schlieffen, right? Alfred Schlieffen, not Arthur Zimmerman, Alfred von Schlieffen. And he was a German military commander that actually died about a year before the war ever broke out, right? And he had come up with a plan. Use 90% of the German forces to sweep through Belgium and try to come at France in the north and take over Paris very, very quickly, right? Because France had several guard towers and forts on the edge right here between Germany and France that they were using to protect themselves from war. So they were like, we'll sweep through Belgium, come at Paris from the north, we'll occupy it, we'll knock France out like that. Like Hitler's actually going to use a similar strategy to this when he actually goes to war in World War II. And actually it worked when Hitler did it, but this time it did not work, right? And the biggest thing about it is the Schlieffen Plan relies on them going through Belgium, right? Well, the thing is that the Belgians, right, actually declared themselves neutral. And so Great Britain said, if you dare touch foot inside of Belgium, then we are going to come slamming down on top of you, right? And the Britons kept their word, and the second that a German boot stepped foot into Belgium, Britain declared war on Germany. Now, another big thing about it is why did the Schlieffen Plan fail, right? Why is this going to ultimately fail? Mostly due to the fact that the Belgians actually blew up railroad tracks and destroyed roads and slowed the Germans down, and also due to the fact that the Germans didn't come in with a huge force, right? They were supposed to use 90% of their forces according to the plan created by Alfred Schlieffen. Now, the thing about it, though, that ended up happening is they only used 75, right? And they used the other 25% of their forces, and they sent them over to Russia, right? And it's going to actually fail miserably, and we're now going to end up in a two-front war, right? But don't worry, y'all. It's not a big deal because, the two-front war will be fine, right? Germans will be able to figure it out. No, they're not. It's going to be the ultimate downfall of their entire military prowess. The Western Front that is going to be established is going to be in northern France and go all the way down to the Mediterranean. And the Eastern Front is going to start in Germany and Austria get pushed all the way back to Russia. But don't worry, guys, it's going to be over by Christmas. The mentality of this war when it broke out was that actually people were not upset, they were not sad, they were not forlorn whatsoever when this war broke out. They were actually excited. Look at the excited faces of all these men going off to war, getting ready to go and fight, and they're like the people of their country supporting them. These faces were saying to themselves and telling everybody, don't worry, y'all. This war will be over in no time because our country, our nationalistic country, will go off and defeat our enemies in one fell swoop. And they were aggressively wrong. It is not going to last a few months. It's going to last 4 years, and it's going to claim the lives of 10 million people. Because the big thing about it is that World War I is a new kind of war that those young men never expected, right? The Schlieffen Plan has failed. There are two big distinct fronts. And what the big reason why it's so different, why is it going to be so different from any war before it, is you got to think really quickly, how was war fought before World War I? Where it was Napoleonic-style warfare, where literally that army went over there and our army went over here, and we took aim at each other, and we went bang, 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 and then they charged each other, and usually used bayonets or as many shots as they could before one side retreated and you gained territory. It's not how this is going to be fought. World War I will be dominated by a strategy called trench warfare, right? Trench warfare, which is going to be a very distinctly intense kind of war that is only really going to be seen in World War I, is when each side of each military dug trenches on either side of a large expansive area of land, right? And so think about it this way. You got a trench on one side, a huge chunk of land in the middle, and then another trench on the other side, right? And the enemies are trying to basically the entire time get into each other's trench to break the lines. This right here is another picture of trench warfare. Those trenches are dugouts into the ground, usually about 6 feet in depth. But the question is why? Why did they dig these trenches? Why is World War I going to be so distinctly different from other wars that have come before it? A lot of it has to do with the technology, right? The Maxim machine gun will be the thing that sends these men into the ground because they have never fought a war against another group that has them, right? Whenever the wars are breaking out in the imperial era, when the Europeans are going to Africa, Southeast Asia, India, and taking those places over, they're using machine guns against people that don't have them, right? That don't have the technology to fight back. Well, now the Europeans, both sides, have these guns, and they are ready to fire them at one another. So to get underneath the fire and protect themselves from a gun that can fire 600 rounds per minute, they dug trenches to actually get down and get below the machine gun fire. So that weapon right there will be the thing that sends these young men literally into the ground, right? And the trenches will be dug at some of the earliest battles that actually break out during this war, right? And the earliest battle that actually broke out leading to this war was known as the First Battle of the Marne, and it actually looked exactly like this. And it's during the Schlieffen Plan, right? During the Schlieffen Plan when the Germans were sweeping through Belgium and stuff like that, and they actually got stopped in northern France by the French military because the French met them at a small river known as the Marne River in northern France. And they had machine guns that they fired on the German soldiers with, and the only thing the Germans had to hide behind was a couple little small hills. Well, what the Germans are going to do at the First Battle of the Marne is they're going to retreat back and dig the very first trenches of the war, right? Now, what's going to end up happening, though, is the French are going to try and flank them on one side, right? Trying to get up and over their trench and come around from behind them, right? Well, what the Germans would do is they would dig their trench a little bit longer. Well, then the French retreated back, and they dug their own trenches, and they dug it a little bit longer. And then the other one dug it a little longer, and the other one dug it a little bit longer. And they called this whole thing the race for the sea, basically, right? Because after the very first trenches were dug, they kept digging them longer and longer and longer so they could avoid being outflanked by their enemy. And by the end of the war, y'all, the very first trenches that were dug at the very first Battle of the Marne would grow into an intense network of trenches that spanned not one, not two, not three, but 440 miles long, ranging all the way from the English Channel all the way down through Switzerland, or all the way to the edge of Switzerland, right? These trenches would go for 440 miles. And another famous saying about this war is that it started on horses, but it ended in tanks, right? Because the technology of the war, what we talk about in class, is going to be very, very important when we actually go further and further into this conflict, right? But the thing about it that we need to also know is that last but not least, there were two fronts to this war, right? The Western and the Eastern. Funny enough, though, the Eastern did not actually have trenches. It was far too expansive, and at times it was too cold because it's over towards Russia, and they just couldn't quite dig those trenches. So it's very important to understand that this war will change shape, but we'll talk more about that a little bit later when I see y'all in class. Y'all have a good one.